first one is actually approval of the November 4th, 2019 regular meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, motion approved 5-0. Is there a motion to approve the November 18th, 2019 regular meeting?
2018.
What did I say? No, I'm sorry. Is there a motion to approve the November 18th, 2019 work session?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, motion approved 5-0. Is there a motion to approve the November 18th, 2019 regular meeting?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Wanted to take a moment of silent prayer for Mr. Tom Cronin, who served on the town council, and his family had a strong legacy of service to the town, and wanted to recognize his passing. Thank you, everyone.
Hey Matt, if you don't mind, can we do another moment of silence? Yeah, so if we could do a moment of silence for Amber Boyette, or Amber Betez was her name before she got married. She was a resident of Narragansett for a long time, went to Narragansett schools and had a shop in the pier called Silver Tides. She just passed away yesterday, so I just wanted to take a moment for her as well.
Thank you very much. All right, thank you, everyone. Our consent agenda, is there any item from the consent agenda that anyone from the council would like to remove?
Yeah, number 4, please.
Okay, number 4, any other requests? Is there an item to approve the consent agenda with the exception of item number 4?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, motion approved 5-0. Item number 4 is a motion to approve the annual service agreement for the water meeting reading system from Itron Incorporated in the amount of $6,001.84.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion.
Yeah, I just wanted to see if John wouldn't mind coming up just real quickly. I just wanted to be 100% sure on what this one was. So John, there's a little bit of sensitivity around the newer technology that sometimes you're using for the long distance remote reading. This is not that, correct?
This is just our existing software package. This is just our existing billing system and meter reading, so it's just a software package where they upgraded. We have patches and normal maintenance of it, so it's our existing system that we use. Nothing.
Okay, so just a renewal of what we already have.
It's the renewal of the maintenance contract.
Okay, that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
It's hard to hear the microphone.
So people, anyone from the audience who comes to that microphone, make sure the red button's on and just speak directly into the microphone. Item number 4, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion approved 5-0. Item number 17 is a motion to accept a reimbursable assistance to firefighters grant totaling $73,850 from the Federal Emergency Management Agency and the Department of Homeland Security Assistance to Firefighters Grant Program.
So moved.
Discussion. Number 17, any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion approved 5-0. Patrick?
Yeah, Councilman Mannix, can we move up agenda item number 35?
Is there a motion to do so?
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion approved. Abstain.
I just want to make sure that people from the neighborhood were here to move it up. I think I'd like to not move it up in case anybody was coming late.
Is there how did you guys want to
So I'm
vote?
voting now.
Okay. All right. Motion approved 3-2. All right. Item 35 is a motion to amend the town parking ordinance and add public parking spaces and the neighborhood around the waterfront public access points at the end of Conan Ave and Pilgrim Avenue was presented by the town manager in the November 18, 2019 public parking workshop. Is there a motion?
Move that motion.
Second.
Discussion, this item comes from Mr. Pugh.
Great, thank you. Mike, do we have the overheads that were, we have those, right?
You'll have to give me a moment, Councilman Pugh. It's in my thumb drive.
Okay.
I'll give it to Dan and we'll put it up on the screen.
Okay, great. Yeah, so we can just start the discussion. Wait for that. Yeah, so this is a item that spawns from multiple work sessions that we've had, as well as a initial agenda item back in, I think it was the late spring, early summer. So earlier on this year, there were a lot of reports of ticketing down in this area. I think it had been happening over the last few years, something that had been getting a little more, I guess, aggressive, the calls and the amount of tickets being given out. This is an area that's always been a surf spot. There's always been a place where people park to go to the right-of-ways. Fishermen go there, and it's been decades that this area has been used. It's become a little bit of a problem now for whatever reason. I don't know if it's just more calls going in for the tickets or what the reasoning is. But we know there's a problem there. We know it's a safety issue. So we're looking for a way to resolve it. And what we're proposing would be to add legal parking in this neighborhood in select areas. So when the overheads come up, we can show exactly where that would be. But the streets where we're proposing to add parking would be at the top of Nickel Ave on the left side when you pull in. And again, we'll go over this again when the visuals are there. As well as Louise Ave and Pilgrim Ave. So it would be a total of 22 spots. We have. Do we have? Yeah, we did. So those are the 4 spots on Nickel. All of these would be contingent on approval from CRMC as well as DEM. So if there are any issues with wetland or protected areas, then we wouldn't be able to do those spots, and that's just the reality of it. So we're basing this approval on secondary approvals from the state. So those are the 4 on Nickel, and then we have the 10 on Louise. So we took special care to only do parking on one side of each road, as well as on lots that are either town-owned or not developed. And I will remind everyone that the areas that we're looking to put gravel down are all within the town right away. So this isn't on private property, this is on the town-owned road that may or may not be being landscaped by people now. But again, this is on areas where there are not currently homes. And then we have the last option, which is on Pilgrim. So there'd be room for approximately 8 cars. This is all approximate. It's based on a formula of how many feet each car needs. So it's really based on linear footage, but we approximated that many cars could fit in there. Earlier on, we had proposed some alternatives, which was parking right at the right-of-way, as well as another, paper road that went through, which was, or maybe it was a right-of-way. We got negative feedback to those proposals, so this is where we landed. This is what we think is a compromise. Whether that's the case for everyone, we'll hear that tonight. But for me, this all comes down to an existing safety issue in an area that's always been used for access. And the complaints that I get on both sides of the issue are safety. So if you're going to complain about safety, and we're offering a solution to pull the cars off the road, so off where people are currently parking, so to make the roads no more narrow with cars, then this is a solution to what you're complaining about, which is the safety. So I'll stop now. I'll chime in again a little bit later, but I'd like to hear what other people think.
Any other comment from the council?
So this particular proposal, if I'm looking right, Mike, can we go back to the maps? Dan? That last one, Dan, that you were at. Is there any way to zoom in on that? So that M, somewhere here I have a M30 something lot. M143 number on a lot. Let's see if I can find it. So there's an M85 lot. Can we see that? Are those lots owned by the town or is that owned by people? These vacant lots. What vacant lots are owned by the people? It's not town.
Yeah, I said they were either empty, undeveloped lots or town-owned property.
So undeveloped now, but down the road they could be developed.
Correct.
So you want to put parking in front of the lots.
Well, this proposal is to do gravel parking in the town right away in front of those lots.
When you say
just like
town-
in neighborhoods where you have parking, like most neighborhoods that have parking, people park in front of people's yards. It's pretty standard. In this neighborhood, it isn't, but in most neighborhoods, it is.
But you want to create parking in that area. You want to put the
Correct.
gravel down, you want to create actual parking
Yes,
right in front of these people's property.
correct.
So we would do that in Metattuxet, we would do it in Pettaquamsket, we would do it in Edgewater, we would do it in Great Island, we would do this in Harbor Island.
We don't have to, it already exists.
Well, I don't know, I don't see gravel put down in Harbor Island or any of those other places.
Because the roads are wider, so what we're looking to do is widen the roads to an appropriate width and add parking, just like almost every other neighborhood in town.
Interesting. So I'm really curious to hear about the people that live in this neighborhood, how they feel about this.
Well, I'm gonna have the council come first, and then we're gonna go out to anyone else from the council. Any comments, Patrick?
Yeah. Yeah, it seems the last few years, the only thing this council has ever done is take away parking. I'm glad to see that we're trying to add parking, especially to Rhode Island Sound. Here we live in the Ocean State, but God forbid, don't park near it. Don't go down there.
We have the Bond View. Didn't the Bond View offer all the parking?
Well, if you're in 60-degree water for 2 hours, the last thing you want to do is walk a mile with a 10-foot board. I know I do.
Well, that's why you don't surf.
Well, not lately, but I know what these guys are looking for. What about fishing? Rick, you're a commercial fisherman?
Yep, exactly.
And you rod and reel,
I
you go
did.
down there and...
I did, and when I went down there, and towards the later part of my life, when my father couldn't walk, he would go down, and we would let people know that we were residents of the community, and those people were more than willing to allow us to park at their residence, not all of them, but some of them, so that we could access to go fishing, whether it was in their backyard or in other locations, Anawan Cliffs, those particular areas. So, you want to start putting parking lots in neighborhoods?
No, I own 2 houses in Narragansett, and there's parking out in front of both houses. I'm not doing anything that isn't happening now. I said, we have a little jewel down there called Rhode Island Sound, and this has been a traditional access to that area.
It's access. You can
From
access
Bond
it.
View to the Point to its light.
Nobody's taking the access points away.
Yeah, but you are if you can't park there.
But you can park at the Bond View or at the Lighthouse.
Well,
What
you
this is
know
doing,
what?
One at
Patrick,
a time, one at a time.
what this is doing, Patrick, is making it more convenient for people who don't live in the neighborhood.
No,
And that,
well,
I do
Patrick,
not
Patrick, let her
believe-
finish.
I don't believe that that is what the town council's job is about. I believe our job is to protect neighborhoods and residents, not to be able to find space for special use.
Well, the problem is the invention of the sand filter septic system has created this problem. 20 years ago, you couldn't build these houses down there because you couldn't get a septic in there. You couldn't get a septic system because there's no sewers down there. So you're talking, you know, I don't know, 2,000, 3,000 square foot part of your property you have to turn into a septic system has now turned into a, you know, 12 by 20 above raised system, which you can maximize the footprint and build a, you know, you've seen these 3 deckers down there. And that's fine. I'm a property rights guy and I don't have a problem. But again, the problem is the more building there is down there, it's restricting access to people who traditionally have had access before. And, you know, I mean, one lady said that I'm biased. I said, yeah, damn right I'm biased. I grew up in this town. I want to be able to go down there and park, take my son fishing, or take my 10-footer and jump in the water, you know, if I get game, and not get a parking ticket. I mean, throughout that neighborhood, there's encroachment on the town right-of-ways, and nobody said anything, and it's all fine. But when you get another group of people who just want to park in close proximity, respectfully, I haven't heard, really, there's confrontations between neighbors and surfers or fishermen or somebody else accessing down there. I think it's criminal that we're not respecting riparian rights and access to that area.
So Coastal Resources says that there's access. No one here, I've never heard one person say they want to deny access. They want to keep the integrity of their, Patrick, excuse me, I'm speaking. They want to keep the integrity of their neighborhood, their quality of their life, and I want to make sure that all of our neighbors have quality of life and integrity. We do not need to be able to make a parking space for people who don't live in a neighborhood, especially this one where we have 2, not 1, but 2 really good solutions. With an owner of a business, which I applaud Rick, he started speaking with the Bonneview, and then Jim went to finalize it. We have a business that's willing to work with us that is a very short way from this product. It might be not as convenient, Patrick, it might be a little cold, but you know what? There are also other opportunities to purchase these homes when they come into market. If somebody wants to purchase it, they can.
Excuse me, everyone. Thank you. So let's try to, so I think, yeah, that seems to be the problem in this particular neighborhood. The roads, as we saw, and if anyone here has gone and when this first came up, checked it out, it's a relatively small neighborhood, but the roads are narrow. So, and not every neighborhood's the same. It's not every neighborhood. Some neighborhoods there's parking, some neighborhoods are nearer to other things. And so it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. And in terms of riparian rights and the public trust doctrine, again, yes, if you're close to the water or you have, if you're near one of these access points, you have access to the water, but you couldn't say somebody who lives close to the water, is right on top of the water, can't basically say, I have a riparian right elsewhere. And I'm not saying that's what's going on here. For example, if you're high up on a cliff, right, you can put a dock there, but it would be very dangerous for you to do so. But if you want to have that riparian right, then you should live somewhere where you can more easily build your dock. But I want to thank the town manager. He went out there and looked at this, and I know he was in the process of kind of coming up with a proposal here, but this came on here before we got to hear from CRMC and the neighbors. So, are there any other comments from the council?
Yeah, say a few more things quickly. I guess I'll say that I do understand the perspective of the people that live in that neighborhood. You know, nobody really wants that kind of change happening in the area that they live. So I understand that. However, this is a neighborhood within a town. It's public property. This isn't a private neighborhood. When it comes down to it, when you buy property in a town, you own your lot. That's your property. Everything outside of that is town property. And what we're trying to do here is normalize an area that is actually abnormal in town. It's hard to think of any other neighborhood where there's absolutely no parking. So we're doing it, again, this proposal is I think it's a respectful way to do it. It's not perfect, probably. You know, if someone is going to develop one of those lots where there's parking, we will remove those spots. You know, if you're gonna have a driveway there, we have to remove those spots. We'll clear it out, you'll put your driveway there, and maybe we'll reconfigure that area, or we'll lose a few spots from the 22 that we're proposing. But again, these are, you know, this has been a surf spot forever. And the people that use it, a lot of, you know, the reason why less people that are parking there are from out of town is because they can't live in town anymore. Now they live in South Kingstown. There's still families that are historic families in South County that are just trying to go down and use the same area that they've always used. And, you know, first they're being pushed out of town, and now they're being pushed out of a neighborhood where they just want to park to go surf. So it's kind of, to me, it's really, you know, this is just the fabric of, it's the fabric of Narragansett changing before our eyes. It's really unfortunate. And I would, you know, I would like to reach out to the people that live in that neighborhood and, you know, maybe have a conversation about the reasons why you wanted to move here in the first place, which I think is the character of Narragansett, which is a surf town, and it's something that, you know, everybody should really respect that history about this town. Thanks.
Yes, go ahead.
So as I look around, most of yous weren't old enough because I was barely old enough. And you're right, Narragansett was a surfing community in town. Then Gil Bain just plowed it over. That's what Narragansett was. Take a look at some of the old pictures with surf shops, pizza parlors, sandwich shops, plenty of parking. It's not that anymore. And people do buy houses to come into Narragansett because they've saved up and they want a better quality of life and they want to be near the ocean. And with respect, they don't mind people using the access points. It's a matter of the amount of traffic and the safety issues that now come because we're more populated in certain areas. And again, when the surf is good, I get it, I see it. I go down to Monaghan's Dock. Sometimes I can't believe the amount of cars that are down there and the amount of surfers. Because I remember when there was not that many. But now there are more. Social media, everybody's on it. Surf's great at Monaghan's Dock. Surf's great down at Point Judith. There's even surfers that go out to Block Island. Block Island has become a very popular spot now to surf, especially on the southwest corner. So, yeah, we're getting more populated. There's a place in California that the surfing is supposed to be the best around. The parking lot is 2 miles away. They actually walk 2 miles to go surfing in this location. Well,
Please, if there are interruptions, I'm going to,
right.
people,
I'm gonna ask you to
we have
leave.
to stop with the interruptions.
So, I went to the Bond View because they are also local owners. And they've been in Narragansett their whole life. And they opened the door to say, well, you can park right here and off the corner of our property. We do have surfers that walk out and enter the water and paddle down and surf. I think that was pretty good of one of our local businesses to open his door, realizing that I have a big parking lot, huge parking lot. Come, enjoy it. I'm opening my door. But to go into a neighborhood and tell people that we're going to park there or we need to park there, I don't think that quality of life is going to be the same. Not everybody is the same at what they do. There are people who do respect other people's properties. And there are people, unfortunately, that don't. And for every 10, there's always that small percentage of it doesn't work out. So, the people that live in this neighborhood, they spent a lot of money getting their houses to where they now are appreciating them. Some have retired. It's not that they don't want the surfers out there. I think a lot of them watch the surfers. It's a matter of their neighborhood's getting flooded with traffic, cars. It's a safety issue. So the alternatives were find locations close by that we could put large quantity of vehicles. And we did. Point Judith Lighthouse, Bonneview. When I fished, somebody would designate and take people down. And then we'd park somewhere. And then we'd thumb our rides. We thumbed to a lot of the places that had these access points when we were kids. I know they don't do it anymore. I get that. But what I'm saying to you is there are places to park that this town has opened the door. And I think that that's very important. For the people who live in this town that enjoy the surfing, they know that there are people in this town that allow them to park on their property and go enjoy themselves. There are those people. Not everybody, but there are those people. So, I know when you go down to Deep Hole Matunic, you have that parking lot. And then if you stop parking up towards the Ocean Mist, it's no parking, and they ticket. There are tickets down there. I know the side of the street that you can't park. I've lived here my whole life. So, again, they do ticket. Sometimes they don't ticket, depending on the events or what's going on. Try to be reasonable about it. But, just, if you think you're gonna come into the neighborhood and say, you know, we need to take, because it's town property. Really? So the town owns property everywhere. So does that mean I can go bulldoze down around the Pier Marketplace because I need more parking for the beach? It's town property. I think this is a can of worms that's opening that doesn't need to be open. I think that down at the Bonneview, there's ample parking. I think that at Point Judith Lighthouse, there's ample parking. I think these right-of-ways that are access points, when there's going to be an emergency or some type of situation going on that we need public safety, they can get in, they can get out, people can be helped. I mean, that's what it's about for me. Thank you.
So the council members have weighed in. We'd go to the public, but we have an 8 o'clock public hearing, so we ask our stenographer to come forward. Public hearings are noticed at 8 o'clock, so we have to, wherever we're on the agenda, we have to move over to that. So I'm going to ask her to come forward, and then when we're finished the public hearing, we'll continue with this agenda item number 35. Yeah, thank you. So we have a motion to open, I'm going to look for a motion to open a public hearing for text revisions of the zoning ordinance of the town of Narragansett to sections 2.2, definitions, 4.7, special flood hazard overlay district, and 6.4, dimensional regulations to address changes made by passage of S-0689, which revised building height definition under Rhode Island General Laws, section 45-24-31.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion approved 5-0. So a public hearing is open. I'm going to call our community development director up because this really, and also Jill Sabo from the department who has been working on this issue. You may remember this came to us when the General Assembly basically changed the base flood, the base at which they would start to measure the height of a building, and it would allow houses to go up into much higher than our 35-foot limit in the interest of protecting against sea level rise. Many cities and towns reacted somewhat negatively to that. I know some of our reps in the General Assembly were opposed to it. We could at the local level vote to react to that, and we did, with basically saying we're going to have an overall height limit of 35, but the statute was amended in the interim. So that's what they're going to talk to us about here, our community development staff members. So, and I know that you have some of it, but I know Jill's worked on it as well. So if you present, that'd be great.
Yeah, stick around, folks. This one's a real sleeper.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the council. I'm only here to introduce this subject, but I think Council President's done a very exemplary job of explaining what has happened. The definition of height, building height, was amended by the General Assembly twice in the last 2 years. We've been trying to keep up with that, and it's a bit of a bouncing ball. But Jill Sabo, the environmental planner on my staff, has been the key person keeping track of that bouncing ball and making sure that the wording of our local ordinance related to building height, particularly in section 6.4 of the zoning code, is up to date and is in compliance with the state law. With that, I will turn it over to Jill.
Welcome.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the council. Jill Sabo, you're all familiar with me, I believe, at this point. Yes, so in March of 2019, the state law changed, and you folks responded to that change by creating tables whereby the height allowance would be commensurate with the base flood elevation or the storm tools design elevation. In July of this year, the law changed again, and the revised definition of height actually, where before it measured from the base flood up, they changed the definition to go back to measuring from existing grade. However, they're subtracting out the area for the design base flood or the storm tools design elevation flood. So it has the same effect, essentially. It also references, the new law also references whereby the old law said that all of the storm tools design elevation maps could be, any one of them could be used, and there were 6 of them, sea level rise 0, 2, 3, 5, 7, and 10. The current law changed that to referencing only the storm tools design elevation map for a sea level rise of 3. And that coincides with about a 30-year mortgage. So before you tonight, and I provided you some documentation, we could walk through it real simply, because what we've really done is just respond to those definitional changes. So in section 2.2, definitions, if you flip simply to page 2, you'll see the red line. I left in the strikeout underline for you so it reads a little easier. But essentially that's the new definition. That's the new definition right there. That's the state law. So we are just amending our definition there. If you move to section 4.7 of the zoning ordinance, on the first page, you'll see that reference under the special flood hazard areas, where you may recall in February we had changed to add in the CRMC storm tools design elevation maps reference. We are amending that section again just to reference that storm tools design elevation map with a sea level rise of 3. And if you go to page 5 in section 4.7, again, that's the definitional state law change. And section 6.4, which is where the height limitations are for the town. You may recall these tables that we looked at in February. So what I have done here, it isn't online yet, but what I have done is take the original section, I added in the changes that you made in February, and then I added in these changes. So you're going to see everything in its entirety. If you go to page 3 of this, the only change you're going to see is in tables 2 and tables 3, the word designed. I added the word design just for clarifying purposes. So it clearly reflects that the height allowance is calculated on the design base flood elevation. And then the same thing on page 5. Page 3 references residential structures and accessory structures, and page 5 addresses commercial structures. Those are the changes.
And this dovetails with item number 32.
It does.
Which will be the first reading of the ordinance, after we have the hearing.
Correct.
So, you can see some of the support either in the public hearing portion of your binder or in agenda item 32. All right, are there any questions for Jill from the council?
Jill?
Yes.
After we made our initial changes in the building, like, they came in, and tweaked their order. So we're readjusting what we originally agreed and taking out the CMRC recommendation, right?
No. You are amending our zoning ordinance to reflect the state definition change in section 2.2 and 4.7. And in section 6.4, you are adding in the word design, so it clearly references and reflects that the height allowances are based on the design to base flood elevation. So those tables that you approved in February have not changed.
Right.
There's no numerical change, nothing.
So the word design basically cancels out the state intrusion, correct?
No.
No.
What they did.
I mean, I think I'm not understanding.
I think what happened here is that the General Assembly amended the law, and they amended some of the definitions within that. So the ordinance that we changed, and even some of our prior language in our ordinance didn't reflect that. So ironically, strangely, whatever word you want to use, the General Assembly's amendment was actually, I think from many people's perspective, an improvement because they removed the higher sea level rise factors of 5 and 10, which that's where you really would get, regardless of whatever our height limit was, but anywhere in the state, that's where you would be getting the really high, going into the 50s and the 60s of overall limit. So ironically, the General Assembly's change, even though we were nervous when we saw they were changing it, it was in some ways an improvement. But this is, but what's going on here is we had language that would just not make sense anymore, and that's what our planning department had to.
And it was obsolete at that point.
Thank you.
Is there anyone who would like to testify from the public regarding this item? All right, that being said, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All right, so discussion on that. So just remember, then what we'll do is I'll ask for to move item number 32 up. But before we close this item, there was some discussion when we looked at this before at looking at the overall height limit in town. You may recall that this was we have a 35-foot height limit for residential homes, and one of the things that was talked about was would we maybe want to lower that amount, which would be the living space that we have, and see if that would be something that the town would entertain. Now, it would somewhat address this issue, but it's something that's come up in the aspect of some of the growth that we've had and some of these structures that have been very large that have contributed to some of our problems in the neighborhood. So it's just something I want to throw out there for the council to think about. Because this amendment doesn't really go to that, I'm not going to make a motion to change or amend anything, but it's something that I wanted to talk about in this context and have people think about. Is there any other comments? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion to close the public hearing approved 5-0. So then what I'll do is I'll take a motion to move number 32, to move item number 32 up.
So moved.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, motion approved 5-0. Item number 32, a motion to introduce, read, pass, and accept as a first reading an ordinance and amendment of Chapter 731 of the Code of Ordinances of the Town of Narragansett, Rhode Island, entitled Zoning, specifically text revisions in sections 2.2, definitions, 4.7, special flood hazard overlay district, and 6.4, dimensional regulations.
So moved.
Second.
All right, discussion. Mike, is there anything in terms of the record that you need? We close the hearing, we have a first reading. Steve? No? Okay. Any discussion on that? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion approved 5-0. All right, which returns us to item number 35, which I'm just going to restate it, but we don't need a new motion on it. This was the motion to amend the town parking ordinance and add public parking spaces in the neighborhood around the waterfront public access points at the end of Conan Avenue and Pilgrim Avenue as presented by the town manager in the November 18, 2019 public parking workshop. All right, so council members have weighed in, and we know this issue's come up a couple of times at different work sessions. So I'm now going to ask if members of the public wanted to weigh in on this topic. Yes. Please state your name and address, and try to be succinct in your comments, because I'm expecting to be several.
Sure. My name is Paula Darren, and I own the property at 4 and 15 Pilgrim Avenue. I did find it very interesting that we would have a council member who would think that it is a bad thing that the property values in the town of Narragansett have increased, because you have hardworking people who have come in, purchased land, and decided to build homes, to be retirement homes, summer homes, places where they can go and relax and enjoy time. I personally did not pick any of the lots that I purchased in Narragansett because of surfing. I selected the residence, as I stated in the working session. My husband and I selected the land that we purchased exactly because it was a quaint, quiet place that had narrow streets, that didn't have a lot of traffic on them, and it was a summer refuge. The ocean is there, you hear it, you see it, you can walk to the beaches, you can walk to the end of the street and enjoy the beautiful coast. I am for people being able to surf. I can tell you the 2 lots that I live at, which are just beyond where on Pilgrim Avenue, we're saying we want to make the parking available. With rare exception, does anyone park there? So if there's that much space that people could be parking off of the road now and not creating a traffic hazard, I would submit that good corporate citizens would choose those spots to have been parking their cars now, not blocking both sides of the roads, creating a hazard and a safety risk for not only emergency vehicles, but the residents of the town as well. I know I go for walks on a regular basis, and when I try to walk around the corner, when they're surfing, you take your life in your own hands. There's no room for the cars, they can't see who's walking, they can't see who's coming. It is a true hazard. So I also can tell you that I see many surfers walk all the way down Pilgrim Avenue because they've parked in the, and I'm not going to know the name of the lot, but the lot that's across the street from Breakwater Village. So they've parked their car there and they've walked all that distance down to go surfing. So I think we as homeowners made a choice to purchase land in a quiet, quaint residential section of town. Those roads are narrow and have been narrow since they've been built. If this was such a treasure and we had felt such a responsibility that the town owed all these people roads that were wide enough for them to park on, why didn't we widen the roads years and years and years ago to let people take advantage of that treasure, as you call it? So I think that you have residents that have chosen to purchase land in this town. I would hope that as a council, you welcomed new residents, making investment in the town, increasing the tax base, and affording the opportunity for further development. And as such, I am opposed to making these changes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Keith Kyle, I live at 65 on Mass Street, Narragansett resident for the past 32 years. For at least all of those 32 years, and prior to that, when I grew up in Newport, I've been surfing at those breaks for 45 years. In fact, I lived on Pilgrim Avenue, the extension, all through college, in a house down there. And during that entire period of time, I had never experienced any problems with any neighbors regarding surfing, parking, or anything. It was not until the town put in the no parking signs that issues began to arise. It seemed to me that, as I said at one of the earlier workshops, that this was much ado about nothing, because it seemed that residents and surfers were able to accommodate each other for the very few times that we actually have swells where there are lots of people there. It seems like it just works itself out. So, I started to think about this, and I think all of you need to take a look at this, honestly, but I began to think, like, what makes this town unique is not that it has great shopping, that we have museums, that we have a vibrant town center, that we have cultural attractions. What makes this town unique is the ocean and our access to the ocean. And one need not look any further than this town's webpage, page 1, where you will see a beautiful aerial photograph from the town beach to Point Judith to the Port of Galilee. And in fact, it's probably my litigation background, I had to dig around on your website because I knew there'd be something regarding the history of this town, and there was. And if you look on your website, the town's quote-unquote mission and values statement, it states, the town of Narragansett is dedicated to providing quality services while promoting our seaside way of life. So promoting the seaside way of life does not mean for the few fortunate enough to live directly on the ocean front. It means for all residents, for all those who come here because of its uniqueness. And along with the promotion of the seaside way of life should flow providing meaningful access to all of the rights of way in the areas that we're talking about, including some place to park for all users of the shore. I'm all for the proposal that's been put forward tonight. And for the town council to not pass this, in my opinion, would essentially be constructively denying access to the right-of-way. And what I mean by that is if we don't have and come to some accommodation with everyone about parking, you're not able to get there. I mean, you're talking about, and I heard Mr. Lima talk about in California, I've surfed all those breaks there, it's 75 degrees there, pretty much year-round. We're talking 30-degree temperatures and the like, and this has been going on for at least my 45 years of surfing. I'm 59, and probably well before that. So I really think that this council needs to take a really close look at this, and it seems to me that the neighbors, as one just testified, they're not opposed to surfers being down there. We just need to come up with a reasonable solution that accommodates everyone, and be mindful that this is not a daily experience like occurs in the town at the beach. This is maybe once or twice, maybe 3 times a month if we're all the surfers are lucky.
All right, thanks, Keith.
All right?
The man in the back, please.
Thank you. My name is Jonathan Clancy. I live at 26 Noble Street in Narragansett, Rhode Island. I'd like to first thank the council for hearing us. I'd like to thank Conrad Furla and everyone who has worked on this amendment for their hard work on this issue. On my way home from school today, my daughter Evelyn told her grandparents, "My name is Evelyn. I'm 3 years old, and I live in Narragansett with my mommy and daddy. And we have a Christmas tree, and we put lights on it, and it's beautiful. and we live near the beach, and I love it. Sure makes you smile to hear things like that, doesn't it? Don't get used to it. I'm saddened when I hear a town named after its local Native American tribe even consider taking away more land and more rights from its residents and the general public. Yes, I'm a surfer. I don't frequent these spots. They're a bit too mellow for me. I'm not here because I don't want to get parking tickets. I stand before you now as a matter of right and wrong. I stand before you now because I fear decisions made by this town are driving families away. I fear that this town that I love and worked so hard over the past decade to be able to afford to buy a home in may turn into a ghost town, void of families, full of restrictions that only benefit people who use this land to turn profit on rental properties. Rental properties that are being built in the very areas we are contesting right now. Big, and in my humble opinion, ugly homes that will remain vacant for most of the year. Unless, of course, they're used for college rentals as well. We all know how that goes. If we continue to bow down to big developers for money that will soon be spent, eventually we will have no more land to offer them, and they will take their dollars and move on to the next small town to ruin that, most likely Charlestown. If we continue to care more about people who use our town for their own profits and are not truly part of this community, I fear we will soon have no community left to fight for. To me, the right choice is simple. Let the people have the parking that they legally have the right to under coastal access laws. There are so many surfers and fishermen and general ocean lovers in this town, and while we can't make it to every town meeting, this is my first as a resident, I'll admit. One thing we do love to do is vote. And while I cannot predict the outcome of this vote tonight, I can tell you one thing. This issue has upset a group of people that do not give up. Look at Ruggles in Newport and the effort put together by Sid Abruzzi and Clean Ocean Access a few years ago. Do some research on tresses in California. I dare you. I dare you. We do not give up. Surfing is not easy. It requires dedication, strength, stamina, focus under pressure, and most importantly, love. We love this land, we love this ocean, and we love this town. And while we may not all get to vote on this particular issue, one thing we do get to vote on is who sits on these very seats in front of us. Look to your left, look to your right. Some of you will not be sitting here come next election. We will not give up on this. We will bring in more social action groups. We will create a new council. We will take up more time, and we will get our rights back. Or you can simply make the correct decision tonight. Vote with your hearts, not your wallets. Vote for this earth, vote for this town, vote for your kids, and vote for your grandkids.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sydney Razzie. I own a home on Caleb Ave, and I also own one of the properties that you're planning on taking over. I'd like to correct Councilmember Pugh's opinion of the vacant lots that you believe belong to nobody. They actually belong to residents and people that live in that area. I own one of them, and by your proposal tonight of taking over my land and putting in parking, you will deny my family access to our land. That is actually protected by many of the same regulations that I think the town of Narragansett needs to follow as well. However, I would like to thank you all and our town manager and the fire chief and the police department for recognizing the safety issues that are down there. The proposal before us, authorized by Mr. Pugh and Mr. Murray, asked taxpayers of Narragansett to fund a gravel and crushed stone parking spots and lots in a neighborhood that simply can't afford the space. We don't have the place for it. I find it very confusing, and when things are confusing and don't make sense, they really don't make sense for a reason. Many of the proposals that have been put forth as solutions have been dismissed and, quite frankly, not acknowledged at all. I think that using our taxpayer money to destroy the natural green space and the fragile ecosystem that belongs in that area, that should be remaining there. I actually happen to agree with the gentleman that spoke right before me. These are rights. These spaces are valuable, they're fragile, and they're special to Rhode Island. For us to come in there and come up with a plan to destroy them and repave over your paper roads that you suggest that you want to put 2 lots in, and especially the lot over on Nichols, which it buffers a salt pond, I think is really a tragic space to be, just to accommodate a small special interest group that would like to park there conveniently. What you're proposing is not sustainable. It is not something that we can keep up with. We don't have the money to maintain the roads as they are right now. We don't have the money to fund many systems in our town right now. And to say that you're going to sustain these gravel pits are not really, I don't think that's fair to the town people at all. What I do find very confusing also is why you work so tirelessly, especially Councilmember Pugh and Councilmember Murray. There are 3 solutions out. I know we spoke of 2 of them. There's also Camp Cronin, the Bond View, which is literally, the parking spaces at the Rose Nolman Park are within 100 yards of an access point. The Bond View is 2/10 of a mile to Nichols Street. So to say you're walking a mile when you're tired is really, it's really unfair, and I think it's a little misleading. I'm very concerned that you don't take into any consideration that the concerns of the neighbors and the people that live here have to put up with quite a bit. I know you think that this only happens 3 times a month in great swells, but to live there and be the neighbors that have to maintain that space afterwards is really, we do that because we also love nature as well. We want to preserve that. We don't want this to go away. Contrary to what some of the other people have said here today, we don't want this space to disappear. But we also recognize that we can't afford parking spaces there. I'm going to leave you now with this one point here. I have to follow very strict guidelines and regulations by the CRMC and the DEM if I ever want to use my land for anything, whether it's parking or not. I may not park my car on my own property, and that's the fact. For the town to come in and take that away, gravel it over, and destroy wetlands and our precious, fragile ecosystem is really unacceptable. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to call on people with their hands up. I see somebody in the back in the white shirt.
Yeah,
I'm going to, and I want to try to encourage people to be succinct in their comments, and also just try to, when you make your comments, please address me as the chair, and if you want to talk about other council members or other things, just try to address me.
Excuse me before you speak, I just want to, before I lose my train of thought, I want to respond to a couple of questions the last speaker had. So in terms of blocking access to your property,
yes.
That's not something we would do. If there is a lot of yours that you need to get to, if you have some reason to drive onto it, we will leave those spots open so that you can drive through enough to access
the maps that you have proposed and the proposal that you've put in place, you have denied access to my lot.
So if you designate a driveway on that property, then we'll accommodate for that.
I am not allowed to build a driveway on my own lot. I have a shed there that is going in place, but to park a car and make a gravel stone pit parking spaces is denying my family access to our own property.
It's not, because we'll give you access to get onto your property. So it would only cover a partial area.
No,
so just
when
like
a car is parked there, we have no access to our property.
Well, we wouldn't block the entire frontage, is what I'm saying.
You're only going to block part of it?
Correct.
That's not acceptable. I think when you buy a lot in this town and you own a piece of property, you have to be able to access it. And for the town to come in and spend taxpayer money to deny access to that.
All right, thank you. So, as I said,
I just wanted to address that point.
All right, thank you. That's why I'm going to try to have people, again, address me as the chair. I know it's hard sometimes to do that because there's other things that you want to talk about, and try to be succinct in your comments. Right? Thank you. Name and address, please.
Hi, my name is Catherine Diven. I live on 49 Pontiac Road. I had in-laws that lived in the neighborhood on Louise Ave. They moved last year because they couldn't afford to stay in the neighborhood. I actually work as a professional engineer who studies traffic. I've been 8 years in the business, and my biggest pet peeve is when people think they know about traffic. So when someone says that building 22 parking spots is going to cause more traffic, that's simply not true, and that will never be true. And so I don't see building 22 parking spaces for people to come and enjoy the natural things that Narragansett has to offer. I don't see that as a problem. You won't see it in your AM peak, you won't see it in your PM peak, and you won't see it on your weekend peaks. Those things will never pop up. You might maybe have 10 cars in your largest volume of traffic, probably in the summer, maybe in the winter, but of all the times I went there to visit my in-laws, I maybe saw like 1 or 2 surfers. And for me, I think that having no parking there takes away a huge amenity that this town has to provide that's unique. Yes, this neighborhood's unique, but this whole town is unique itself. So I would like to see this as a compromise. And my last thought would be, if everyone's so concerned about the safety aspect, then why aren't you, one of the other comments of why not look at widening the road itself? Have you guys looked at auto turn movements to do so? And have you looked at implementing wider roadway systems in those areas where you might have those critical movements? So, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Christine Duffy, and I own 6 Summer Street in Narragansett. I have 2 points that I'd like to address tonight. First, the town has publicly recognized that parking has been occurring in the neighborhood for years by Pilgrim and is potentially impacting the safety of emergency vehicles passing through. And we've identified 22 parking spots on town-owned property that would mitigate this problem. In the current state, if a drowning was to occur, a fire was to occur, and emergency vehicles couldn't pass, there wouldn't be time to tow a car or a work truck to get down there. And as a healthcare professional, I know every second counts in these type of situations. Regardless of the outcome tonight, it seems like cars and work vehicles will likely continue to park on the road as they are now. And from a public safety perspective, I believe the town would be negligent to deny the creation of these new proposed spaces. Secondly, the neighborhood directly to the north of the Pilgrim area contains 3rd Street, 4th Street, etc. It's nearly identical to the Pilgrim neighborhood. I took a drive down there myself today to take a look at it. The homes are close together, some of the roads are equally narrow, and there's a path that is used by people to access the ocean. This neighborhood to the north actually allows on-street parking on the pavement, and it's during the day. The proposed spots in the Pilgrim area are on the shoulder and off of the paved road. So I would just like to know if someone from the town could please address why we are holding the Pilgrim neighborhood to a different standard than this very similar neighborhood just to the north where 3rd Street lies.
Thank you.
Politics.
It's not politics, Patrick. Every neighborhood's different.
Why are we holding this neighborhood that's so similar to
actually,
the standard?
If you don't mind, Mike, do you mind coming up for a second? Because when we went to Luca, sorry to put you in the spot, but I know when we first met on this, you did a little bit of research on the history of that neighborhood. So do you know when why it's been like that and when those signs went up to actually officially make it no parking?
Actually, I'm not the person to answer that question, Councilman Pugh. That would be the police chief.
Okay.
Because I know that he's been directly involved with the issue of parking and the necessity to keep the roads clear. So I didn't draft any of the ordinance that required the parking.
Okay, my mistake. I thought it was you when we had the meeting, so sorry about that.
Yes.
Hello everyone, my name is Patrick Doherty Jr., a tenant at 9 Flint Drive. My family moved to Narragansett in about 2002. They rented, I believe it was 15 Meritorium Bonnet Shores as they were scoping out the market, bought Flint Drive and Indian Trail, I believe it was 2004. But something special happened in 2006. I was born in '94, so in 2006, I'm now 12 years old, and I remember playing Narragansett rec soccer right up the new Cristofaro. That was amazing, especially with an amazing skate park that we had back then as well. It was amazing to feel the community of that. After a soccer game that ended at about 11:30, I had a teammate's father who loved surfing Connet and down at Pilgrim too. He said, "PJ, would you like to come?" No one else in my family surfs. I just grew up on Narragansett for the summers. Long story short, those waves right there actually gave me the confidence to start surfing in rockier waters. Narragansett Beach is phenomenal, but when it gets too big, the waves tend to crash, and that's when you have severe rip current, and also just drowning can occur because you really haven't, you could be too far out to realize how much physical strain you're going to endure. Speaking from that, surfing those breaks for the next 2 years off and on with whenever we had swell possible, I didn't personally have my license, but there was never really a problem. We knew certain areas we couldn't park on the side of the road just due to traffic and transit, but there was never a problem of if we could go down there and park. And maybe it was respectful on some people we knew. However, then moving that up to 2008, I then was 14, that's when I first surfed Monahans because of that confidence boost. So I'm not here to talk about the values and everything, just the psychological effects that it can truly have on someone who's grown up in this town. And to build off of what we have here, I run an Instagram account called The Ocean State. It has 11.3 thousand followers, and we don't even do any paid promotion. It's solely just love for the Ocean State. There are so many people that comment on that say, wow, I moved down to Texas for work, or I now live in Maryland. Just keep doing this. We love seeing what we once left behind. And a lot of them love to come back. Maybe they flourish elsewhere, but let's not ruin the argument of his ideology, her ideology, but just the act that it can be very improving to one's mental health and also just the love of surfing. Of course, there's some people that won't respect areas, that kind of park and leave tread marks in an area like that, but as myself, I don't surf down there often anymore because of just the hassle that it will cause me. And it would be very awesome in my future and hopefully my family's future one day to be able to have at least, hey, maybe you got to get there at 5:30 a.m. to get a certain number of spots. But something like that I hope to put into a little boy that I may have in my future, and hopefully he resides in Narragansett as well. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Colin Hines, 88 Tupelo Trail, and I'm also Vice Chair of the Surfire Foundation chapter in Rhode Island. I know a lot of you personally, I've met you before, and I know that a lot of you, your hearts are in the right place, so I understand this can be a tough task to kind of balance residents and surfers and the like, to try and find the right solution. You know, as a resident myself, been a long-time resident, grew up here. My grandfather been here since the 60s. My aunt owns the Anchor Motel. She used to own the Atlantic House back in the 80s. I mean, my family is well entrenched in this town for many, many years. And I also am a landscape architect, so I also understand the residents' point of view in terms of their opinions on this whole parking situation. But to get to the point, basically what I see after listening to all the comments and everything, who knows why the tickets have been starting to fly the last few years. Could be more cars parking there now than ever. Could also be the fact that new residents have moved in where older ones were there before. Whatever the reason, there's obviously an issue that needs to be addressed, and I hear things like the bond view being thrown out, and I understand that is the intention is good. I get it. But when I hear things like that, it's a private property owner trying to come up with a public solution in the end. And that could change on a whim, and that could change with a sale. And for many reasons why I think that probably is not the most beneficial solution to this parking problem. Narrow roads. If you look at Metuxet right now, current neighborhood in Narragansett, we have parking on all roads in Metuxet. There's, anybody can park wherever along those roads and not get a ticket. Trust me, I've called the police once or twice for a rowdy college party, and they've told me the same thing. But the point is that there are plenty of neighborhoods here that you can park on the roads. And I think one of the issues that you find in this particular neighborhood, and this is the landscape architect to be talking, is that you have substandard width roads. You have roads that are maybe 15 feet wide, you know, roughly, give or take a foot. And honestly, that is probably its own problem, regardless of whether or not people are parking there. And there's been people parking there, obviously, like one resident said, for over 40 years. I mean, this is a problem, and it wasn't a problem until maybe the last few years. I mean, this has been going on for decades, almost half a century, if you think about it, without too much of an issue. So this whole parking thing isn't necessarily new. It's more along the lines of now just trying to designate an area, it seems to me. The whole comment about destroying green space, I understand that as a landscape architect, destroying the green space. I also, though, have to look at the other side of the coin of what I've seen. And in that very same neighborhood, I've seen 2 or 3 residents who have built their houses and gone for variances and plowed over every inch that they could possibly get of that green space to try to obtain more space for their building. So you'll have to excuse me if that isn't something I see as a valid argument, given that it's just a little bit of grass here and there and it's already being parked on. Let's not get away from the issue here. This is already happening. So, you know, I think what they have here is a fairly decent compromise. Is it the right one? You know, I don't know. You know, that's for you guys to decide, but I think it's definitely headed in the right direction and one that should be strongly considered, because I think there's been a lot of back and forth on this, and I think unless a public solution is made to a public problem, this isn't going to go away and it's not going to get any better.
Okay, thank you.
Gotta be more bold.
Miles Point, 2016 Street, Narragansett.
Just stand up.
I just want to say I've been surfing the area for a while. I was fortunate to have a parent that introduced me to surfing when I was like 6. I've been going to Conant and Pilgrim for that whole time. And one thing that we all can agree on is that surfing's become more popular. Parking on good days is a bit more chaotic than it was when I first started. If you guys decide to approve these parking, it would give it some kind of order. And I think that's really what it needs. If there's designated parking in certain places, us as the surf community can help police that and speak to somebody that maybe is from out of town or, you know, visiting and say, hey, this is the area that we have to park. You're making a choice. You're parking outside of that area. The Rosenelman Court park is up the street. You can park there. If the Bonneview is still letting us park there, you can go there. But not having any parking is not a solution. And I think to repair the relationship with the neighborhood that I feel is kind of building, like we have a negative relationship right now, is to create some kind of order in that area where us as the surf community can tell other surfers or other people, fishermen, kayakers, hey, you know, this is what we've been given. We want to take care of this, we want to preserve it, and we want to maintain this positive relationship with the neighborhood. So, thank you.
Jeremy Marcantonio, Wakefield, Rhode Island. I'd just like to address a few points that were brought up during the workshop, in which many of us were not allowed to speak in. I promise I'll keep it brief. First, to Jim and Jesse's point, yes, this is a public safety issue, but really at the heart of it, this is an infrastructure issue, and a byproduct of infrastructure is public safety. In the workshop, you depicted some of the turning issues with emergency vehicles in the subject neighborhoods, and yet somehow you all seemed baffled as to how to resolve it, resorting to the most extreme and haphazard of solutions, if you want to call it a solution, when in fact, one of the most elementary things that you learn in city planning is the very simple remedy of no parking X number of feet to a corner sign. The distance of the corner is determined by the radius needed for the emergency vehicle, which is like 45 feet. So in these particular neighborhoods, it's really only about 10 to 15 feet from the corner. And now if the town really wants to hang their hat on the argument of public safety solely based on emergency vehicular access, then how do you plan to address the emergency vehicles getting to the homes along Central Avenue where the roads are 13 feet wide, 15 feet wide? How are you going to protect a neighborhood when your roads aren't even NFPA or IFC compliant? More to this point, Central Ave on the south side of Conant, pretty much half of Pilgrim and pretty much all of Nichols aren't even compliant with Appendix B, Section 13, Subpart B of your own town Code of Ordinances. Tables 2 and 3 of that subpart, street design standards, indicate that a town street servicing more than 5 homes has a required minimum street width of 20 feet. And Nichols, which is less than 5 homes, has a required minimum street width of 18 feet. Clearly, there's development happening on these streets, so these ordinances are applicable. And lastly, I'd just like to call out the elephant in the room, which is the adverse possession of town by private landowners. We've surveyed over 10 properties in this neighborhood in which private homeowners have encroached on town land, claiming it as their own. Homeowners have built walls, rock fences, planted vegetation, as well as expanded driveways, expanded their backyards, either into paper roads or right up to the road's edge, all on town, or better yet, taxpayer property. Interestingly, this is the only neighborhood in Narragansett where this is prevalent, and kind of ironic that a member of the zoning board happens to live here. By your own argument about the cars, the annexation of town land by private homeowners has similarly burdened the entry and egress of emergency vehicles, just the same as any other person parking there. So you see, there's an inherent infrastructure problem here that by simply removing parking isn't going to solve. If you decide to actually look and fix the issues presented herein and put together a well thought out parking management plan, you'll see that there's a chance for the residents to continue to live in a beautiful neighborhood and to be able to exist harmoniously with the intermittent and infrequent parking of surfers, fishermen, and contractors without any hindrance of safety to the public. Thank you.
I'm Susan Landers. I am the only full-time resident on Nichols Avenue. I see that you proposed 4 parking places on Nichols Avenue. I live there, I work there, I barely leave there. And I can tell you, on a day without parking on the right side of the road, 2 cars cannot pass. Every year since I've built my home, I've had to replace all the sprinkler system heads in the front because people drive on my front lawn because the width of Nichols Avenue is not wide enough for 2 cars to pass. Adding parking to the right is going to make it even worse because now they can go off on one side. Once you put parking there, that side's gone. I have pictures just from one day of parking there. It was Saturday, or was it Sunday? Cars got stuck on the side of Nichols. There's wetlands right there. I actually assisted one of the surfers and offered him something to get his car out of where he sunk into it. I mean, I don't have a problem with the surfers parking, but Nichols, I will tell you, is not a solution. I walk my dog there. I almost get hit when people come around the corner. It's a very narrow road. That's really all I have. I hate speaking in public, so.
You did a good job.
Anyway, if you want the pictures, I'd be happy to give them to you.
Yeah, please give them to our town clerk. She's right there. That'd be wonderful. Thank you. Yes, in the back.
Stuart Sheehan, 35 Tanglewood Trail. I'm a resident and homeowner. One thing I just want to echo a lot of the sentiments on is that the value in Narragansett is really predicated on the ability for everyone to enjoy and access the coastline and the ocean, and that's really, really predicated on the ability to park there. If I'm in the north of town and I want to be able to surf, I really need to park somewhere, and I really think that walking from Bonneview or the Lighthouse parking lot down to Pilgrim is not a feasible option. Are you guys gonna put sidewalks in? Are you gonna shovel them? Are you gonna maintain them when it snows? There's a lot of surfing that goes on in those conditions, and I really think it's really kind of not even a Band-Aid. It's kind of stitching together something that's already dead, and it's not sustainable at all. And I just want to kind of reinforce what Miles said. I think he had a lot of strong points, and I want to support just a sustainable solution and legitimate parking in the area. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, council members. John Kennedy, 19 Pilgrim Avenue, and I am the member on Pilgrim Avenue, zoning board member that someone referred to earlier. I honestly don't see what one thing has to do with the other. But my wife and I have been fortunate, right? We were able to purchase a property back in 1992 on Pilgrim Avenue, and we've been year-round residents ever since. I've surfed. There's family members that surf and enjoy surfing. It's not an issue to walk from my house over to the quay, from my house down towards Nichols and beyond. You know, there was a lot of points made tonight about, limiting access. To me, it's not valid. It doesn't hold water. No one's limiting access to the ocean. There is access, right? You might have to walk. You know, I think the neighborhood, the residents in the surfing community have coexisted, as Keith mentioned, for over 45 years. Jesse, you mentioned that a lot of tickets have been issued. Someone else mentioned tickets flying. I think the facts show that there's like less than 10 over a 2-year period. And I don't think the residents are calling in to have surfers ticketed unless there's a major infraction, you know, blocking the road, parking up on somebody's lawn. But it's really very minimal. You know, I just think that, you know, early on, maybe even the first workshop, there was comments made much ado about nothing. I think that's not the case anymore. You know, I've seen social media, you know, items, even when we left the workshop, you know, comments made, and it's disheartening, I guess, to think that people don't think that the residents want to see surfers in that area. We want to see people access the water. We want to see people surfing. That's part of the reason that we've all moved there. You know, there is some due diligence that I don't think has taken place. There are a lot of comments, the roads are narrow. I think they're narrow for a reason. They're wet on either side. It's a very wet area. I don't think, I'm not in favor of the parking lots being placed in the neighborhood. I made that comment during the workshop. I'm still holding to that. So the ticket issue, I wanted to comment on that. You know, Jesse, you mentioned most neighborhoods in the town have parking on both sides of the street. I don't think that's a true comment. You know, I don't have all the facts, but I know the neighborhoods well. I've traveled throughout all of them with my role on the zoning board. And there are many neighborhoods with very narrow streets. This isn't the only one. You know, there was comments made on, you know, development and rentals. It's really not a high rental area. Many people are fortunate enough to purchase a home and they maintain that home. They're not renting it throughout the winter or the time that they may not be there if they're not year-round residents. 22 spots. Even if it did pass, and again, I urge the council not to pass the motion tonight, but even if it did pass, it doesn't mitigate the issue. When the swells are up, again, we've been there for a long time, right? Over a quarter of a century. There's been times when the swells have been up days on end after a hurricane has passed by. And I remember it well. We had to post, or the police department had to post an officer at Iggy's and on Carries, right where, Ocean Road meets Point Judith Road. And it was one in, one out for the whole weekend. You know, so those are issues. And I just think that, you know, the council has done a good job, town manager has done a good job with his safety officers. provided another solution, and if to walk
John,
10
thank you,
mile,
yeah.
it's not that far. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rob Jones, South Kingstown. Unlike everyone here, I bring props. Thank you, Town Council, for hearing us. I have served in Rhode Island for 22 years, and not as just been here as a surfer, but as an ocean lover. And I hear people say, park at Iggy's, park at Bondview, and walk. You want me to walk down the road with this, carrying a surfboard? There's no sidewalk. People fly down that road. And I understand that people fly in your neighborhoods as well, but Point Judith Road is a whole different animal. The other thing I'd like to bring up is, as an ocean lover, I take my kids down there on flat days, and we go with garbage bags, and we pick up as much of the coastline as we can. And I've never seen anyone else do that but us, as ocean lovers. These guys are growing up with this in their backyard, and they should still have access when they're older. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, council members. My name is Ari Gavinet. I live at 20 Broadman Street. I'm part of your new tax base, so I'm not going to stand here and say that I've been serving Rhode Island for 30 years and that gives me the right to block anyone's property. And I'm very sympathetic to the property owners who don't want their access to their property to be blocked permanently. I'm very sensitive to property owners who think that their streets are unsafe and they don't want them to become more unsafe with narrowing of the streets by presence of more and more cars parking. I'm sensitive to the owners who believe that now, and it's probably true, there are way more surfers than there used to be back when it was just an occasional thing. But I would hate to think that there's any group of residents in our town who get to say, nobody can park in my street. No resident of the town should be able to say, my quality of life is so important that I can bar an activity that happens everywhere else in the town for selfish reasons, for good reasons, for access reasons, for safety reasons, sure. But somewhere between zero parking and some parking is a rational solution. Organize, as Miles said, organize the chaos. The streets will be safer. Take the people off of the muddy roads. Put some gravel down in appropriate places. It will be safer. There will be more room. Somewhere between zero parking and a lot of parking is a good compromise that allows some number of surfers to have access, but not so many that the quality of life of the residents, who I respect, will be destroyed. Most of the residents who've spoken today seem to be happy with the occasional parking of the occasional surfers. But the influx of surfers to the neighborhood is making small roads unmanageable. Limited parking enforced by the police. I'm sorry, I don't want to tell my fellow surfers, you can't park there. I'm just not that kind of a guy. I would rather have the police say, we have 10 legal spots, you park outside the legal spot, I don't care if it's a Massachusetts plate, a Rhode Island plate, a Connecticut plate, you get the ticket. But safe, orderly parking, I believe Miles is correct. Somewhere between zero and something is a solution that works for everybody and respects the right of owners and so forth.
All right, is there anyone else? All right, so if any members of the council want to speak to this.
Sure, real quick. Jim, so you came on halfway through this process. We had already worked on this with acting manager Corrigan. But when you came in, you kind of jumped right on it, went down to the neighborhood, checked everything out, worked on these proposals. I would love to get your perspective on what this proposal would do for the neighborhood in terms of safety and adding some order to a situation that already exists, because we all know that parking will continue. So can you just give a little bit of your opinion on this?
Well, I prepared along with Mr. DeLuca, some of the potential parking spots that could be located after CRMC and DEM approval and input from the affected parties. And that's what I've done and presented to the council.
Yep, so I understand that we vote on this. Do you think this would improve the situation in that neighborhood?
It could, but again, there is an infrastructure problem now. There's no doubt about it. The streets are very narrow. That's the way they are. But it could. Like I said, I was asked to prepare it at the direction of the council, and I prepared it.
Okay, thank you. Ricky, I know at the last workshop you had said your tone was a little bit different than tonight, or at least the way I've received it. You did say that you would kind of go with the town manager's opinion on this, and that you respected his authority in terms of safety and that sort of thing. Is that still your position on this?
So the town manager has looked into this. Did you actually get the reports back from CRMC?
No, that point. That's pending them to come down and actually visit the site and check the whole plan out.
So you knew Jim was going to CRMC, right?
Yep.
So why didn't you wait till he got that information back?
This is all pending approval from CRMC. So if we vote on this, and then a spot doesn't get approved, we'll put the parking there.
But you couldn't have waited for Jim to get all that information, and then we could have brought this up and then said, bingo, here we are.
I believe he did meet in some.
But yes, I do take the advice of the fire chief, police chief, town manager, the public safety issue of what's down there.
Mm-hmm.
I do, right? Public safety is the major issue. So, based on public safety, yes, right now, doesn't seem like we have the turning radiuses that are needed if cars are parked on both sides of the streets. So again.
Well, these are only on one side of the street.
They sent the proposal. If you waited for CRMC to come through with everything, and if CRMC rejects these proposals, then we wouldn't even have had to put this to agenda on, right?
Well, Ricky, there's no sense going to CMRC and DEM.
CRMC.
Whoever. There's no sense doing that and sending this guy down a rabbit hole if you folks aren't going to approve this proposal. We have a rough idea where we're going to put this. Then you go to CMR and say, hey, can we do this? You don't try to get an approval first and then come and ask you guys. If you're going to deny this tonight, you're just spinning this guy's wheels. So, I mean, if you guys are for it, then we move forward. It's the cart before the horse, going the other way. It doesn't make any sense.
Just the issues evolved, though, remember, I mean, we originally were looking at 6 parking spots.
Well, these are 6 parking spots that are already there.
But the 6 parking spots, we were gonna add 6 parking spots, that was what the first work session. So the issue evolves, right? People go back down, they look at it, then CRMC, with the timing of when CRMC weighs in, we were kind of waiting for that. But I just remember that it's not just, we talked about the compromise of 6 spots, that's what we were talking about at the beginning of the summer, so.
Well, actually, it was 6 spots at the right-of-ways, plus there was another section that we had talked about. So yeah, but it turned out that the appetite for those spots at the entrance points was not there from anyone. So this was a solution that didn't involve parking right at the right-of-ways.
So the issue evolved, exactly, right, Jill?
So let's go back to the other neighborhoods. Someone brought up the fact that there is parking on the roads in other neighborhoods. Well, that parking is to accommodate people who live in that neighborhood, not people who want to come in and use the facility right away. It's a big difference. If we're going to take a look at this, let's just take one example. Rick listed many different neighborhoods, Metatuxet, Narrow River. Narrow River is a beautiful body of water. If we were to actually have to do the same thing, provide parking there, move ahead and take over some of town parking to provide parking for people to use Narrow River, that would then have people not be able to go down to Narrow River Kayak, launch from there. It would provide people coming into a neighborhood where they don't live. And that is something that I don't believe is a fair process to do for any of our neighborhoods. We started in one, it becomes a set standard that we can apply to other neighborhoods, and there'll be other special interest groups coming in demanding the same.
Again, there's not a real big surfing community down there on Narrow River.
Patrick, it's not all about surfing, it's about fishing, about water active kayaking, it's about all of our
But there are
things.
so many places on Narrow River where you can access. There's 2 good breaks down here.
So, and is there, all right, so, thank you, Joe. All
I
right, so,
think what we're trying to do is we're trying to provide a solution for an issue that's been down there for years. All right? And it's going to be CMRC, DM approval. Nobody's destroying green space. If anything, we're protecting it, putting crushed stone down. And providing access, providing safety, getting cars off the road, and utilizing our coastline. As councilmen, this should be one of our duties to give people access to the ocean, Narrow River, or wherever.
but all the neighborhoods are different. I mean, one of the things that people in the community like is that the neighborhoods are all, people have, they move places that they like. Some people like to be on the river, some people down in Galilee. It's totally different environment there. Some people, you know, there's people who are on Great Island and they have different access to the water. And in this neighborhood, you know, what I see is, what it seems to me is the people like the situation. We still have a duty to protect private property rights.
Nobody's
Right?
encroaching on private property.
Well, but
Again,
people parked.
People own houses, they're parking out in front of their street. It's been going on since the apostles, okay? I mean, again, the parking in front of my house.
Are we honestly saying that you can't?
Please,
park in front of
excuse me,
neighborhoods?
excuse me. It's inappropriate to yell out, so.
I'm sorry, I raised my
thank
hand
you.
to be recognized. You have a council member who said you can only park in your own neighborhood.
This is, excuse me.
That's
Don't
outrageous.
yell out.
You can throw me out. That's
Yeah,
outrageous.
please, I'd like you to be thrown out. If you're new to town, you should learn some law and order. You should be thrown out. Learn some law and order.
I'll go.
And that's it, this is not a.
Can I go with
So again, private property, right, Patrick, which you've always been a strong advocate for. I mean, that's my concern, right? I know people want access to the water. Access to the water is access to the water. It doesn't include a parking spot. We have narrow roads. We have a safety problem there. And people talk about how the safety problems have arisen because people have violated the law. So I'm concerned.
Cars off the road. We're solving.
It's the safety problems created by people parking where they shouldn't park.
But we're putting them in the town right away.
All right, so about the safety problem, I would like to recognize one of the speakers earlier had mentioned that I think it's negligent, right? Negligent to avoid addressing this issue. When something happens down there, which will happen at some point, and an emergency vehicle cannot get through, the town lawyer is going to say, well, you know, people knew they can't park there, they broke the law. However, we're all aware of the situation. We know the problem, and we're intentionally avoiding fixing it. This is a liability that we know, and we're saying, who cares?
That's a total misunderstanding of how the law works, Jesse.
That's what I'm saying.
The laws are broken, right? If the law is broken, it's not like we know, it's not an area that's not been regulated, that doesn't have rules. It's people know what the rules are and they know in the
Correct.
environment.
We're looking at this from a legal perspective.
I'm looking from
and we're
all
looking at it
perspectives.
from a realistic perspective of what can happen.
Well, we can't have another lawsuit, Matt, okay? We got enough going on right now.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
No. Motion fails 2-3.
Yep, and we saw it right on social media.
Item number 18 is is a motion to approve the purchase of a gas detection system for the fire department from Shipman's Fire Equipment Company Incorporated. All right, well, why don't we we're going to wait 2 minutes for our next item.
When something happens, they're not going to sue the people that were parked there. They're going to come after the town, and they're going to look at this process. That's what Jessica was saying.
All right, welcome back, everybody. All right, item 18 is a motion to approve the purchase of a gas detection system for the fire department from Shipman's Fire Equipment Company Incorporated, the total amount of $32,147 using the state of Massachusetts contract.
So moved.
Discussion, this, I believe, is a grant where there is no taxpayer matching. Is that correct? No. Number 18. Wait, could you explain that then?
This is, 95% of this is supported by the federal 5% match by the town. So the overall grant was, before that, item number 17 was for $73,885, and 95% of that is federal award, 5% is a match required by the town.
So the 5% rule applies to this item as well?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I didn't have that in my notes. All right, thank you. Any other questions, comments? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion approved 5-0. Item 19 is a motion to approve the request from AmpSurf to conduct a one-day free surfing event for disabled veterans at the town beach on Saturday, June 6, 2020, from 7 a.m. to 1 p.m., subject to state and local regulations.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion approved 5-0. Item 20 is a motion to approve the request from Gray Matter Marketing and the Narragansett Historical Society to conduct the 7th annual Ocean Road 10K road race to be held on Sunday, October 4th, 2020, from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m., subject to state and local regulations.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion approved 5-0. Item 21 is a motion to approve the Bobby Doyle 5-mile Summer Classic Road Race on Sunday, August 9th, 2020, subject to state and local laws.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, questions from anyone? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion approved 5-0. 22 is a motion to approve the 1 2-year seasonal agreement with the Burgundian to vend from a food truck at the town beach on Monday and Wednesday nights only in the south and north lots from the 4th Monday of June through Labor Day from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. subject to state and local regulations.
So moved.
Second.
This truck is replacing Eddie's Barbecue, is that correct?
Yes.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion approved 5-0. A motion to approve the proposed 2020 Narragansett Beach schedule change to open and charge parking fees and admission fees 1 hour early at 7:30 a.m. on weekends and holidays at the town beach from Memorial Day to Labor Day.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. So this kind of came out of our work session. I'm going to have Steve just come up very briefly, but this was mentioned in our work session. I want to just make sure that if anyone had questions for Steve.
Good evening.
So this is from the work session, although this wasn't an output necessarily, it was some of the feedback that we'd received, and so this is moving up the opening time, correct?
That's correct. Not only the work session, we've had this request for numerous years, including our survey. So after giving it some thought, actually went back, talked to staff and the Rec Advisory Board, and we think it's a good idea to do it on a trial basis on weekends as a pilot program for 2020 season, weekends and holidays only for next year, starting at 1 hour early.
Steve, the workshop, I know it came up briefly. I remember when it came up, you had said, and you could correct me if I'm wrong or misremembering, that it wasn't really feasible financially, I think, and logistically to do it to go that hour early. You've looked at it in the past. There were reasons why we hadn't done it.
Well, I've always had reservations because, as I pointed out to everyone, is that we start at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, grading the beach, preparing the beach, rubbish removal, and nothing's impossible. It's just that it takes a lot of resources to do that. And so, in order to open up an hour early or to close an hour late, you need staff. And you know, our payroll is around $500,000 just between the months of, you know, Memorial Day and Labor Day. We do quite well, as you know, for our enterprise fund. So, can we do this? Absolutely. So, in order to open up early, we're going to have to, by state law, we have to have lifeguards on duty for that hour. So, we will be charging, and so I think we'll do quite well because it's holidays and weekends only. So we're just going to have to start an hour early on all of those exercises and disciplines to be able to be prepared for those weekends.
Okay, and how long has it been an 8:30 opening?
It predates me. I think it's been for many years.
Okay, so you don't have any knowledge of it ever being open at 7:30?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. In the blue sheet, I'm just looking at, there's a line in here. Parks and Rec Department receives numerous emails and beach survey results each year with concerns on beach access prior to 8:30 a.m., particularly on weekends and holidays from those with free access from the 240 parking spaces available on the seawall. I don't know if it's the wording, but I'm confused on that.
So, and that's absolutely true. We're constantly we get emails from our residents about folks parking on the seawall and having access to the beach. What typically happens is folks park and they park before 8:30, and then they drop their family off and they go park on the seawall, and they'll park there all day for beach access.
Okay, so what's the complaint about?
I don't have a complaint about it. That's the complaint residents have about that. I personally don't have a complaint with it.
Okay, and so the complaint is that they are upset that people are getting on the beach for free?
Exactly.
Got it. Okay. My opinion is that if someone was to get up that early and get down into town and park and get to the beach at 7:30, totally fine with them getting in for free. That's a lot of effort to do that. I think you should be rewarded for that effort by not having to pay to get onto public property. I'm uncomfortable with charging for the beach at all. I understand why we do, and it's been like that for a long time, but it looks like what we're doing is limiting that access even further. Has there been any discussion? So I do understand the point about getting people into the parking lot earlier, right? Because if people want to park, they're residents, and they want to get into the parking lot, they can't do it till 8:30.
So the flip side of that argument would be is we have residents that want to have access to the beach earlier on weekends and holidays. And so we've had folks say we'll just give access to residents in the north lot. And so you just can't flip a switch and say, open up the north lot to residents only, because again, by state law, we have to have lifeguards on duty. So if you're gonna put lifeguards on duty, you might as well be open, period, because we're not a state beach where we can just have a parking lot open, and we're not, because we're just not charging for parking, we're charging for admission. So there are a lot of stations that we have to have folks at each station and admission station and parking.
So sorry.
So in order to do that, we have to have a whole staff complement on duty at 7:30 to open the beach up. Same thing when we close, we stop charging at 5, but we have the whole complement of staff on until 6 o'clock, and then we keep our restrooms open until 8 o'clock.
So we have to have the whole staff on because we're charging for admission?
That's correct.
What if we only opened up the parking lot but didn't charge for admission until 8:30?
By state law, you can't open up the park, you can't open the park, you can't have your beach open without lifeguards on duty.
No, I'm just saying the parking lot. So nobody at the gates for the beach.
Then the beach would be full by the time.
No, but you still have to pay for parking.
You can't do that by state law.
You can't charge for parking?
No. Without lifeguards being on duty.
So there's a law that if you charge for a parking lot, you have to have lifeguards on duty, even if the beach is just open, just totally open to the public, the beach itself. Just like if someone went at midnight.
So, I'm sorry, what's your question?
Can we charge for parking, just parking?
Yeah.
If people want to park in the parking lot, but then there's nobody manning the gates to the beach.
Well, that'd be like a state beach. We wouldn't be charging admission.
Could we do that for an hour? If people, because residents are complaining that they can't park it. If they get there at 8 in the morning, they're not able to park because the gates to the parking lot are shut. So we can open the parking lot, they can park, they can walk right in.
We'd have to give that some thought. I think that would be it would be problematic with the way our admission fees and our fees are concerned. That would be very confusing for folks for doing that for an hour. I'd be against that. At least trying to do that for this year.
I'm just trying to make it so, keep the accessibility for the people that are getting to the beach early and going home for free. Maybe they don't have the money.
I just think consistency is the best thing, is that if we're gonna, that's why we've always charged between 8:30 and 5, and then having it just weekends and holidays between 7:30 and 5 makes better sense as a pilot program. To start doing it just parking for the first hour and then admissions at 8:30 would be extremely confusing, I think, for folks.
Okay, so, or the alternative would be to just keep it how it is.
So this was discussed at the work session. We kind of, as a council, talked about it, but didn't really come up with a recommendation. We had the recommendations that we've had from the different work sessions. But when this item came up, I asked the manager about, I said, well, because we went kind of, where did this come from? The Rec Advisory Board, which provides advice on the beach, and we can disagree with them, but that's really, they looked at this and they were at the work session, and they basically at their November 13th meeting recommended this change, and you had thought about it as well. So that's in terms of that's where it came from. So I know the Rec Advisory Board, both of these, both Jill and Ricky have served on it. Once in a blue moon have been able to go to those meetings, but that's where it that's where they like the recommendation.
Again, as a pilot program for 2020 for weekends and holidays only, see how it works. I mean, we haven't tried this, like Council. We have not tried this before, and we'll give it a shot.
Yeah, Steve, didn't we go from 4:30 to 5?
No, it's always been 5 o'clock.
It's always been 5 o'clock?
Yes.
I guess they want to move it to 6 at one point, right?
Well, it's tough to charge up until 6 o'clock and then pull the lifeguards off duty.
What kind of impact to the labor, like extra expense per day, those 2 days? 10%?
I think we can do it. I mean, I wouldn't be up here if I think we can do it.
But you haven't did an income, how much payroll would be required?
Well,
you're there, what, 9 hours, not 8 hours?
It's based on the income, so we should be able to sustain.
Well, he expressed concerns about it at the work session. Steve expressed concerns, but I think the Rec Advisory, which I unfortunately, I wasn't at, they talked about it, and so those concerns, I think that's why he's saying pilot, see what it does to revenue, see what the customer service implications are. It's kind of, he's putting it in as a we'll really look closely at how it changes the numbers, correct?
Exactly.
I don't know, it just seems like yet another attempt by the town to restrict people access to the ocean and parking, I mean, just close the gate.
The town beach.
Yeah.
The town beach for the town residents.
Sure. Yeah. I'm going to Bonnet.
Please don't. We don't want you.
So,
So, I sit
to the decorum ordinance.
Excuse me, I sit on the rec advisory board, and
You do, all you do is whisper the whole meeting. You set a lovely example. You set a lovely example for the public. You scream out and you whispered the whole meeting. So, would you have a question for Steve instead of the show?
excuse me, I was speaking here, so I wish that the other council members could just listen for a second, please. So I sit on the rec advisory board, and this discussion has come up in the past, not just this year. But it was looked at because many people thought that people were, from outside of our community, were getting on the beach. And by the time that they got to the beach, where did these 500, 800, 300, 200 people that are already on the beach, where they show up from? So they do get there early, and they do park in other locations, right? And then I'm sure they'll continue to get up earlier as we go along. But people get a pass that live in town, they get a parking pass. So to open up a parking lot and charge for parking, those parking lots aren't really made for outside parking. Those parking lots are made for the town people who bought the parking passes. So to say that I'm going to get down to the beach and not have lifeguards because we're going to have parking and I'm going to pay $10 to get on the beach for that day, that's not going to happen in those parking lots. Those parking lots are made for the residents for the parking passes. So if they are part of the cabana or the beach pass, that's where they park. We wanted to try this program, and we thought that the weekends and holidays would work. We'd collect a little bit more revenue, hopefully not have as many people show up ahead of time, so that, again, the people who are the residents of the town, because it is a resident beach, would be able to get their spot on the beach or a location on the beach that is comfortable for the residents. And this is a town beach. We're trying to make it very resident friendly. I know there are people on this council and past councils that wish to have, open the doors for North Kingston, South Kingston, their friends, but this is a town beach. If you want to go to other beaches, that it's $10 a carload, I think, if you go up to Scarborough, Roger Wheeler, Sand Hill Cove area, you can do that. But this is Narragansett Beach. This is for the residents. Residents come first. They buy their beach pass, they buy their parking, and this is our beach. This is a pilot program. We're going to try this. Steve's staff, which runs that beach, unbelievable. If you go to that beach, you check out whether it's the restrooms or walking on the beach, parking lots, everything is clean, it's immaculate. I give them a lot of credit. And they do put up with a lot every day. So, this pilot program, I'm going to try it, I'm going to see how it works out. If it doesn't pay off, or it doesn't work, and there's not much effect, then we don't follow through with it. But it'll be up to Steve and his staff to let us know.
All right, does anyone from the public want to speak about the beach? All right, see any other questions? Yeah, Pat.
Patrick Cavanaugh, 109 Winterberry Road, just 2 seconds. My dad, God rest his soul, and my Uncle Jim, they both had an old group back in the 80s and 90s, the CRAB, Citizens' Right to Access Beach and Shores, and they went all the way up to the state Supreme Court, and they kept getting arrested. Gil and Deglia sat here and heard them out. However that all ended, I think trying to get another couple bucks out of somebody earlier in the morning, just like Pat said, keep the gate closed, keep it as it is. If people get up at 7:30 in the morning and park on Ocean Road, let them walk on the beach for free. It worked out last summer, so thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, all in favor? Oh, yes. Oh, I should see you.
Chip Show at Swanee Street. I have a different spin on the whole thing. When they park on Lower Narragansett Avenue, it really is a problem for bikers or trikers to get through there, especially when there's cars coming from both sides. And it really limits pedestrian traffic, it's dangerous, because there's no place to go. And years ago, they started letting them park at the elementary school or the peer school. But I, as a resident and having arthritis, I can't walk down to the beach. And I also have bad skin cancer, so I often don't go down in the prime hours, and there are no spots left. So I think that the residents, this has to be addressed, and the residents should be the priority being served in this town. And you can't have it both ways. I mean, you should be able to walk and bike down to the beach without having cars on both sides of the road, which they do on that lower Narragansett Avenue. And it's not fair. Like some people might, I'm an early riser, but they start letting non-residents take the parking places, I think around 1 usually. And that's a problem for some of the residents, particularly the seniors.
All right, thank you. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
No.
Motion approved 3-2. The next item is a motion to adopt amended 2020 Kinney Bungalow fees.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. So do you want to give a brief overview, Steve?
Yes, thank you again. This is basically to simplify the fees at Kinney Bungalow. Daisy's not here tonight, but I wanted to. She wanted to explain that we're just trying to combine the fee to include tables and chairs. What happens when she, either before or after the event, or just before, prior to the event, people that are renting Kinney Bungalow get confused with the pricing, and they're paying for the event, and then they have to pay for tables and chairs, because we rent tables and chairs at Kinney Bungalow. They're not renting them from a private entity like some of the other venues. And so that fee is added into the total expense. And so we're trying to be a little bit more transparent in our pricing, and we're still a lot less expensive than some of the other venues throughout the state. And then instead of having several seasons within our short season, we're making it one season. So again, we're just trying to simplify our fee structure. And and the other good news is in 2018 we took in $85,000, 2019 $116,000. So Kinney Bungalow was actually doing quite well for itself. So we took a hard look at our fees. We're not increasing the fees again. We're just trying to simplify our fees. I think with this new fee structure, it's just going to help her be able to sell that building a little bit better. That's all. That's basically what it is.
Any questions or comments? Yes, Dan.
Stan Wojciechowski. I was just hoping that the fees would go up to make sure that all the expenses are covered. Is there any, I didn't know if there was any taxpayer support, or is it self-supportive at this point? And if not, then I'd like to see that fees increased so it does support itself. Well, that mentality anyway, let's keep on increasing fees.
It's a management fund. I can't remember off the top of my head what the revenue or shortfall was from last year. If Steve could provide that to you, not tonight, but he can get that information to you.
Thank you.
All right, anyone else? All right, all in favor? Aye. All opposed, motion approved 5-0. Item 25 is a motion to approve the renovations to the women's room at the North Beach Clubhouse to be completed by Abcor Restoration Company Incorporated in the amount of $26,860.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, motion approved 5-0. Item 26 is a motion to approve the 2 agreements with Narragansett Surf and Skate Shop, 74 Narragansett Avenue, Narragansett, for a 3-year surf lessons agreement and a 3-year weekly surf camp agreement at the town beach, and authorize the town manager to sign the agreements.
So moved.
Second.
And these two, Steve's here, these two are linked, the items 26 and 27. Is that correct, Steve? Yeah. Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion approved 5-0. Item 27 is a motion to approve the 2 agreements with Warm Winds Limited, 26 Kingston Road, Narragansett, for a 3-year surf lessons agreement and a 3-year weekly surf camp agreement at the town beach, and authorize the town managers to sign the agreements.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion approved 5-0. Item 28 is a motion to authorize the town managers to sign the Second Amendment to the net metering credit sales agreement with University Solar LLC.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Does anyone have any questions on this?
I just had one question.
It's a little complicated, yeah.
John, how you doing? I know we approved this a couple years ago. You weren't here. I forgot what was the plan at the end of 20, 25 years for disposal? Was there a bond for that? Didn't they get a bond to clean up the site?
This one here is not the landfill.
Isn't that the landfill?
The Superfund site, no, this is the off-site in West Greenwich.
In West Greenwich. Okay.
So this one is not the one that's over on URI
Okay,
campus.
the one at URI, was there a disposal bond on that? You know?
That I don't know. I know we maintain it and we still pay maintenance fees and monitoring for the landfill closure. But I don't know if there's a bond. I don't know if we had a bond for it.
Okay, all right, that's all I have. Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion approved 5-0. Item 29 is a motion to approve the purchase and installation of vinyl tile for the town clerk's office at Town Hall from Shore Contract Group in the amount of $13,636.88 pursuant to the Sourcewell NJPA contract.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion approved 5-0. Item 30 is a motion to waive current policy and authorize the use of the miscellaneous construction services contract with George Sherman Sand and Gravel Company, Incorporated, to perform repairs of the existing 12-foot and 15-foot storm drain on Ashton Lane between Sakana Boulevard and Exeter Boulevard, including the intersection of Foster Lane and Davisville Lane, in the amount of $145,300.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion approved 5-0. Item number 31 is a motion to award the bid for ADS pipe for the Public Works Department to the lowest bidder, Ferguson Waterworks at their quoted bid prices for a 1-year period ending November 30th, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion approved 5-0. Item 32, we may recall we read and did the first reading of that ordinance in conjunction with the public hearing. Item 33 is a motion to approve the meeting schedule for the budget process for fiscal year 2021, which begins on July 1st, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
And I'm going to ask, is there a motion to amend to include March 30th, 2020, if needed?
Make that motion.
A second.
All right, so, all right, all in favor of the amended motion?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion approved 5-0. Item number 34 is a motion to adopt a resolution establishing an administrative compensation schedule for fiscal year 2019-2020.
So moved.
Second.
Jim, these are the changes to the ranges for the administrative, for the senior staff. Any questions?
No, I was just going to say that's correct. It's overdue in the transition between when Sean was the acting town manager and I came in.
And that's for 2019, 2020.
Correct.
All right. Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion approved, 5-0. We already did item number 35, so we next move to our open forum public comment portion of the meeting. And so if individuals who wish to address the council, please raise your hand. There was a presentation or an announcement that I needed to make. I'm going to make it at the start of the public comment, and then we'll jump into public comment. We had 3 individuals who had filed Open Meetings Act complaints against the town regarding the town manager hiring process. The 3 individuals are Melissa Jenkins, Amanda Moss, and Dennis Monahan. The Attorney General's office ruled that the town violated the Open Meetings Act during the town manager hiring process. To that end, the office directed the town to release minutes of the meetings at which the council discussed the town manager hiring process. In its directive, the Attorney General's office stated the council could discuss candidates' job performance and character, but not the interview schedule and contract terms of employment with the selected candidate. This distinction, in my opinion, is almost impossible to follow, as employment terms and job performance are inextricably linked during a search process for a manager and almost impossible to separate when we're interviewing our candidates. However, based on the directive, the town released the meeting minutes to the complainers on December 5th, 2019. This release did nothing to protect the public, as the town would have followed the same process to select a town manager, whether that process was public or private. The Attorney General's office did not direct the council to restart the town manager hiring process and did not pursue a Superior Court complaint against the town. While the town does not agree with the office's finding, it has complied with the directive to release the minutes, and copies may be obtained from our town clerk. Anyone have a public comment? Yes, Carlene.
Carlene Town, Wood Hill Road. I know we've all been admonished over and over again that this is not a question and answer period, but I read in the newspaper that OLIS denied the town's request for a waiver for not level funding the library. I was hoping that someone would tell us what the town has done in response to that denial. And please don't say that you appealed the decision, because we all know that that would just result in another denial. What are you going to do to ensure that the library will be able to remain open on less than 31% of what has been its operating budget for at least the last 5 years? Secondly, I would like to know why council members always get a chance for rebuttal, but members of the audience never do. For instance, on November 4th, as we were reading the history of the library, Matt interjected that there were a lot of misstatements being made, and he wanted everyone to be aware of that. First of all, why should any of you have the right to interrupt speakers? And secondly, I would like Matt to identify which facts were incorrect, because I don't believe any of them were so-called misstatements. So council members refute what library supporters say, in actuality calling us liars, but they never refute anything library detractors say. A great big example of that occurred at the November 4th meeting, when a man stated that he took a walk down to the library to use the printer and couldn't get near the building because it was so crowded with the rehearsal. Now folks, picture the library and somebody walking by with the ramp, the sidewalks, the parking lot, and someone walking by couldn't get near the building? Talk about a misstatement that was further enhanced with his statement that he walked in and saw us rehearsing. Which was it? He couldn't get near the building, or he went inside? In any event, there were no rehearsals going on at the library that day. For weeks before the November 4th Town Council meeting, we had been planning to read the history. We all had our assigned pages and knew exactly where each came in the sequence. We were at the library for a regularly scheduled Friends meeting that had a preordained agenda. If you want, I will get you a copy of the agenda, and you will see that rehearsal for the town council meeting was not on it. But when the audience voiced its disbelief at the man's accusation that the parking lot was full because we were rehearsing, we were told by Matt, "Don't yell out." Everyone has his or her right to an opinion. I may not agree with Richard's opinion that the second floor of the Belmont building is only good for a shuffleboard court, but I respect his right to have an opinion. Opinions are one thing, but outright lies should not be tolerated at town council meetings. Thank you.
Stanley.
Stan Wojcicki. I don't know if you read in the paper, library supporter really gave me an idea on how to stop all this fighting. But he said, by keeping taxes low, the town council maintains high-cost homes, discouraging young families who are priced out of the market. And voters have the ability to change the future. So I guess we want to change the future and get our taxes increased. Let's not keep them low, let's increase them. And you know right well, I've been here for 25 years trying to keep the taxes low. So I thoroughly disagree with this fellow. However, it opened the idea of the solution. The solution is a library tax assessment. Those who want a library and those who vote for a library can sign up for a library tax assessment so they can all fund the library. Not all taxpayers have to do it, just those that sign up and accept a library tax assessment. It's kind of like a sewer tax assessment in other towns. They'll have a library tax assessment. Now it sounds to me like, you know, if they give $100 a year for 10 years, that's $1,000, and you got 6,000 of them, you got $6 million. So they can pay for the library. All those who want the library should have the right to sign up for an assessment, town assessment, and pay the $100 a year to pay for the library. Not force everyone else. Library tax assessment. That's the answer that comes out of it. They want it, they pay for it. Work on that. Work on the assessment. Assessment. Not a bond, not a mortgage. An assessment for those who want it. And not force cost on those who don't really see the economics there. And on a side issue, I want to mention that there are 12,557 voters. And I read, and that would make that the 7,448 that did not vote for the library bond. 7,448. 59% of the registered voters in this town did not vote for the library bond. Let me say that again. 59% of the registered voters in this town did not vote for the library. 59% did not. I understand the 67, but I'm saying 59%. Now, of course, hopefully this election, everyone will get out there to vote and we'll have the right decision made. But as of the last vote, 59% did not vote for the library. And I have to repeat that because I've heard the 67% so often. I'm going to say 59% did not vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Stan. Yes.
You don't show there, Ricky. You don't show up to vote, it doesn't count.
Stan stated his opinion. Thank you.
Ted DiStefano, 94 Colonel and John Gardner Road. This was published in the Narragansett Times about a week ago. Save the date, January 17th. It was recently announced that the next important court date in our efforts to save the Narragansett Public Library will be January 17th at the Kent County Courthouse. This is the date when library supporters, more than 2/3 of the voting public in the last election of the voting public, will have to vigorously oppose the group of 3 council people who are anti-library, anti-progress, and anti-education for us Narragansett residents. This group of 3 is led by Matt Mannix, the self-anointed town council president.
Not true, not self-anointed.
Excuse
that is
me,
a lie.
please don't
They're
take
clarifying a lie. That's a lie.
Please don't take my time. It is very important. There's the First Amendment.
There's a lie. There's a lie for you guys.
First Amendment, you know, right to free speech.
Well, we know.
It is
you guys
very
fought to
important
quorum
that-
tooth and nail. I saw it.
It is very important.
I saw the whole thing.
May I speak,
I
please?
saw the whole thing.
It is very important that the informed majority, the library supporters, be present in the courthouse on that date to show support for a long-planned library project. It has become apparent that the well-to-do fully support our library project. The Murray Family Trust has pledged $500,000, and most recently there was a front-page story in the Narragansett Times that substantial additional donations have been received to further boost our move to the new library building. So why is Mannix so anti-library? Why did he slash a library budget, causing an exit of wonderful library employees who must have thought that their tenure and pensions were at stake and that there are greener pastures elsewhere, places where libraries and communities are valued, where parents want their children to have access to modern, up-to-date libraries, and where the wishes of the voters and property taxpayers are heard and respected. A case in point is that at town council meeting, Mannix et al. Refused to thank the Murray family for their very generous gift. Why is Mannix behaving in this manner? Who could possibly be advising him to act this way in this most strange and most rude course? So what is the proper course for the library supporters at this time? Well, it seems apparent to me that they have already charted their course. Fight the Mannix team of 3 in court. Show the court, the Narragansett residents, the state, and the rest of the world for that matter, that our town is for education, for progress, and for excellence. Show everyone that we are not a backwater town, but a caring and forward-looking town that values all of the things that have made America great. Education, progress, and parents who want their children to have the proper scholastic tools, including a good library. Thank you.
Nancy, and then Richard.
Nancy DiNuccio, 8 Vanderbilt Drive. On November 18, 2019, at the Narragansett Town Council meeting, the majority, Mannix, Lawler, and Lima, voted a financial gift to the Pier Liquor Store. Like most businesses conducted this term, it was a surprise amendment with no discussion with other councilors and no comment from the public. No amendment was attached to the motion, and the change was approved at the speed of light. November 18th was the meeting where each liquor license by class was read out loud and voted to approve for another year. The attachments to the motion were the typical boilerplate descriptions of the current regulations regarding liquor licenses. Instead of approving the 4 liquor store licenses, as has been done in other years, the council president approved 3 Class A licenses and moved Pier Liquors to another category all by itself. The Pier Liquor license was modified as follows by President Mannix. Quote, on this one, I'm going to be seeking an amendment for the renewal of the license to replace the stipulation which was approved on July 17, 2006, that reads the license shall not be transferable to either a different owner or a different location, with the following. The license shall not be transferable to a different location, but may be transferred to a different owner. On June 15, 2018, the town manager, Jim Manning, now superintendent of the Rhode Island State Police, spoke to the owner of Pier Liquors and advised him that the town was moving forward with the purchase of the Belmont building and the space he currently occupies. The owner stated that he had 2 years left on his contract. He further stated that he would possibly move out within 1 year and that he would be approaching the town council for consideration of modifying his liquor license so that he could move to a different location within the town. But the council insisted the license could not be moved or sold. Clearly, they could have modified the Pier Liquor license to allow the business to move, but that would allow Pier Liquors to vacate the library space, something this council is intent on stopping. So why would this council modify the license to allow a sale? It certainly looks like a major gift to Pier Liquors. The business now can be sold with the liquor license intact. Some say that could be quite a pretty penny. And just like the wrong-headed attempted sale for PVK LLC, there is nothing to protect the town. This business could close tomorrow and cash out the next day at a much higher price. Why was there no attachment for the amendment, no discussion by councilors, no public input? Fooling around with a liquor license is one thing the state doesn't like. Perhaps the councilors could explain themselves.
Actually, I have a question about that, or I can respond to that. I actually voted no on that because of the amendment. It happened so quickly, I wasn't really aware of what was happening. Only that it was this random amendment that came up. It was never discussed in executive session.
Yes, it was. That is a total lie. That is a total lie. Oh my God.
Unseal the minutes then.
You guys are incredible.
All right, excuse me then. So, Jim, did that request come through your office? I don't know, because I never heard anything about it.
It was just on the agenda.
But the amendment wasn't.
I don't recall.
So, where did that amendment come from?
It came from our discussions in executive session. That's why I put it. We discussed it.
You remember that we discussed it?
We discussed it because we said that it was...
And we couldn't put it in the P&S.
Yes.
You can't put a transferability of a license. It was one of the things that they had asked for, and we talked about we can't put it in the purchase and sales agreement because it wouldn't be appropriate for a purchase and sales agreement.
We never discussed amending that so they could sell the property.
Okay. Go ahead, Jesse.
All right. Well, if you want to unseal
live in your
minutes,
own real world.
You can prove it, I guess.
Put on a motion to unseal minutes then.
Sure.
Do it in January. Gladly.
All right,
Go ahead.
I'll do it.
Put on your motion. Yeah. All you've done is waste time the past year, the two of you, with your motions. So go ahead. We just waste time and we don't actually govern. We'll be campaigning next year, though, don't worry. I thought we would govern for a year and act like adults, but you didn't want to. Richard, go ahead. Richard.
Yeah, just a few random thoughts. One thing, something quite strange. I wish you all a Merry Christmas.
Thank you, you too.
And I do have a solution for the surfing thing. It's a business opportunity for Uber. Uber for service. I think that is... Now I have a New Year's wish here. I'd like to throw some of these out. You've heard them mostly before here. The 4 M's. Moderation, we had a terrible example tonight of non-moderation. Meditation, a rare thing indeed. Some medication, preferably tranquilizers. But most importantly, mediation. You remember the song, you don't always get what you want. The other song, working together, we can work it out. And I will say to the critics about the library pension thing, I have no problem with pensions. It's the COLA that is the killer. And to give any new employee a COLA is a cruel error in fiscal management for the taxpayers. Now, I will tell you my response to the 2014 bond issue, which I thought was murky, To me, when I voted, and I voted no, because I didn't believe the library board was fiscally responsible. I haven't changed my mind. What I was voting on was the 15,500 square feet of the old IGA market. I was never voting for the second floor, the indoor shuffleboard, nor the liquor store. To me, the issue was, do I like this 15,500 square feet? Now, this was my view. Apparently, people feel there were a number of different things you could look at the vote. But I will repeat to you that we are making a huge mistake by not letting the second floor and the liquor store go. Let that sale go. And I do remind you, when you go to a courtroom, it's not like this facility. The judge not only will throw you out, the judge will lock you up. And I hope that there is no such behavior from this town like I've seen here in the courtroom. That doesn't go.
Thank you, Richard. Patrick?
Website up real quick. Patrick Kavanaugh, 109 Winterberry Road. This right here, I'm really trying to get across to everybody I ever talked to. I emailed it to you guys. I tell everybody I know, this right here is a website that is created by the U.S. Department of Treasury. And if you look right over there to the left, things working, but right now everybody in this room, our children, our future grandchildren, we're 23 trillion in the hole, and that's how fast it keeps going. That's $187,000 per taxpayer, or $70,000 for every man, woman, and child in this country. Going up as we speak. My 3 minutes, it will go up $7 million in the 3 minutes I talk. If you have kids and you have grandkids. What I want to do, I'm going to talk to the school committee to get this hung up in middle schools and high school. Because this debt will never be paid off by everybody in this room. This is the debt that we're handing the kids in middle school, high school, and their kids, their generation. So, if you scroll up just a little bit.
You should, Patrick, use the microphone.
Okay, I have a big mouth, hopefully everybody can hear me. But if you scroll up a little more, right down there, Social Security liability, Medicare, and Medicaid. The United States federal government owes $127 trillion that we cannot pay, that we'll never pay. $127 trillion that we won't, and our kids won't, and our grandkids won't. So, if you can click on one more, the state of Rhode Island, at the very top, it says Rhode Island State Debt. State debt card. Up on your top left. And then click Rhode Island. Our debt, on top of the $123 trillion we owe, that we'll never be able to pay. Rhode Island is $12 billion in the hole. Rhode Island. Unfunded liabilities, pensions, health care, that we will never be able to pay. So, you saw the debt in the federal government, you saw the debt at the state level. What I'm trying to get to here is your number one job, and I've said it over and over and over again, I've said it to other town councils, a fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayers of Rhode Island. It's not just to get a parking spot for the service. It's not to open the beach earlier or later or fix somebody's sidewalk. This is what we're handing our kids. It's not about a library. This is what we're handing our kids and our grandkids and our great-grandkids. It is immoral. So somewhere, somebody has to start to bring some sanity back to this country. And it can start here in Narragansett. So when I'm talking about the debt, everybody stepped up here and said that the state of Rhode Island has said Narragansett is pretty close to our borrowing limit, and we want to
borrow more to build $11 million library. And what goes up my butt sideways is the CAM fees. The 20-year bond, we're going to pay $800,000 to $1 million to Gilbane for CAM fees that we can take care of ourselves. So what I'm trying to say is between this federal debt, the state debt, and the debt we have here, on top of $1 trillion in student debt across our country, and every other debt that we can think of. People say we're the richest country in the world. We are not. We are the biggest debtor nation in the history of mankind. I'm not lying. That's the U.S. government telling you that. So please, I mean, the library is kind of attached to it, but we have to start somewhere, and all of you folks can start here at the local level. Don't put us in any more debt, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Lori Kelly, Wildfield Farm Road. I'm just wondering, I thought that PowerPoints from members of the public were banned, and so I'm really surprised how that was approved to be done. Should we all be bringing up PowerPoints for open forum? Is that a new policy?
Thank you, Lori. Thank you.
Can I
No,
get
it's
an
not
answer?
a new policy. Thank you.
So, but I can
No,
next
you
week do it?
can't. No, you can't.
So
Thank
how
you.
did he get to do it?
Thank you. Thank you.
What?
Thank you. It's a government website.
No, we're not
Thank
allowed
you.
to project on the
Is there a
town
motion to
website. So wouldn't it be, everyone be able to do that? I have a website.
Just make it.
Yeah. Okay, good to know.
Make a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, thank you, everyone. All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
No, we have someone with their hand
Motion
up.
approved. Patrick, what's your vote? Motion approved. Yes or no to adjourn? Motion approved 3-2. Thank you. Merry Christmas, everyone. Happy New Year.